Hello everyone, I'm Miyako. This video is a Manyoshu Part Two. If you want the basic knowledge of the Manyoshu, please watch the Part One. The poems in the Manyoshu were composed from the early 7th century to the middle of the 8th century. One of the unique features of that era was polygamy was commonly practiced. Polygamy was a custom of having more than one wife at the same time. When an emperor had more than one wife and thus several princes, caused a power struggle for the throne. Among the wives, they are ranked according to the social status of their parents. I'll take the two emperors as examples. Emperor Tenji and Emperor Tenmu were the brothers with the same parents. He was elder. Each of them had many wives. 4 of his wives were the daughters of his elder brother. Their mothers are different. They are half-sisters. Siblings could marry each other if their mothers were different. This empress died young, and this prince lost the support of his mother. This empress became more powerful. When Emperor Tenmu passed away, this prince was executed on suspicion of treason. When he was sentenced to death, he composed a poem. Another feature of that era was people went out to the field to gather edible plants. Plants were also used to dye clothes, so picking young greens was an important annual event at the court. People composed poems about grass picking and cloth dyeing. You'll appreciate 15 poems. I hope you'll enjoy the video.
Lady Nukato was one of the great poets in the Manyoshu. She got married to Emperor Tenmu when he was still a prince, and they had a daughter. Later, Lady Nukato became the romantic relationship with Emperor Tenji after separating from her ex-husband. The imperial court had annual events. One of them was a hunting trip. There, men hunted deer and women collected plants for medicinal herbs and natural dye stuff. One year, at one hunting trip which Emperor Tenji organized, Lady Nukato composed a poem when her ex-husband was waving to her from his horse. The act of waving is a kind of spell in this era, a gesture of attracting the soul of the person you love to yourself. 茜さす紫の雪、しめの雪。の森は水や、君が袖振る。I was walking over the grass field of the imperial domain. I was wondering if the girl has seen you waving at me. After the hunting event, the evening banquet was held by Emperor Tenji, and Lady Nukato read her poem in public intended for her ex-husband, who was also at the party. In response to the poem by Lady Nukato, her ex-husband read his poem. Their exchange of poems delighted the other attendees like an entertainment at a banquet.
The next poem was composed by Emperor Tenmu. Emperor Tenmu was his younger brother. When he passed away, his son took the throne. For him, he was his nephew and also his son-in-law. His wife was his daughter, Lady Nukato gave birth. He defeated the new emperor and became Emperor Tenmu. He had several wives other than his 4 daughters. Those days, it was common that husbands visited some of their wives after their marriage. So, in some cases, a wife still continued to live in her parents' home after marriage. On a day when it was snowing heavily, Emperor Tenmu sent a poem from his palace to Lady Fujiwara, his young wife, who was at her parents' home in Ohara.
我が里に大雪降れり大原の降り西里に降らまくはのち Heavy snow is falling here on my village. Well, deserted village Ohara will see snowing much later than here. In response to his poem, Lady Fujiwara humorously composed a poem. 我が丘のお上にいて降らしめし、雪の砕けし、そこにちりけん。On the hill where I live, I pray to the water god to make it snow here and let you have a small share of its scattered flakes. Lady Fujiwara was the daughter of Fujiwara no Kamatari. Kamatari was born in Ohara and his family had lived in the area. The emperor's palace and Ohara were within walking distance of each other. After Emperor Tenmu passed away, Lady Fujiwara got married to her older half-brother. The story of Prince Otsu is famous in ancient history because of the tragical incident over the succession to the imperial throne after the death of his father, Emperor Tenmu. He had an elder sister with the same mother, and his mother passed away when he was 5 years old. According to the ancient history books, Prince Otsu excelled in everything: appearance, personality, literature, and military arts. He was very popular with people, and Emperor Tenmu thought very highly of him. The emperor had a prince with his highest-ranking empress. The empress was the younger half-sister of the late mother of Prince Otsu. The empress was worried that Prince Otsu would be a hindrance to her son's future and wanted to get rid of him. When Emperor Tenmu passed away in the middle of September, the empress became the Empress Regnant, that is Empress Jito, and obtained a great power. Half a month after the death of Emperor Tenmu, Prince Otsu was captured on suspicion of treason and sentenced to death on the bank of Iware Pond in the imperial court. The next day, he committed suicide by hanging himself in his house. He was 24 years old. The history books mentioned his wife and child grieved and also committed suicide soon after. When he was sentenced to death on the bank of Iware Pond, Prince Otsu composed a poem in tears. 桃伝う岩れの池に泣くかも今日の実見てや雲がくりなん Today is the last I see, the pond of Iware, ducks are crying there, and I have to be disappearing into the clouds. Princess Oku was the daughter of Emperor Tenmu and the elder sister of Prince Otsu with the same mother. When she was 12 years old, her father, Emperor Tenmu, appointed her to serve the goddess in the grand shrine at Ise. When her brother was executed, she was dismissed from the position in the shrine and returned to the capital. Without marrying, she lived a quiet life and passed away at the age of 41. In the Manyoshu, there are 6 poems composed by Princess Oku about her brother. After Prince Otsu was executed, his remains were removed to the tomb on Mount Futakami. Princess Oku composed a poem lamenting the death of her brother. うつそみの人なるあれや明日よりは二上山を色せとあがみん Me in this mortal world, from tomorrow, will have no choice but to look at Mount Futakami as my beloved brother. Princess Tajima was the daughter of Emperor Tenmu. While living in the palace of her half-brother as one of his wives, she had a secret love affair with another half-brother, and it caused a great rumor. In those days, Men would visit women when they are romantically involved. When her love affair became known to the public, she ventured to visit her boyfriend by crossing the river early morning. She composed a poem about her feeling. 人ごと茂みこちたみおのがよに、未だ渡らぬ朝川渡る。Nagging rumors persist. I would dare to do, early in the morning, for the first time in my life, I'm crossing the river. Prince Hozumi was a half-brother that Princess Tajima had loved. When their love affair became public, he was sent to the mountain temple for a time. There is no record of the two of them ever getting married. One winter day of the year, when Princess Tajima passed away, Prince Hozumi looked from her at the hill where Princess Tajima was buried. Heavy snow was falling. He composed a poem in tears. 降る雪は泡にな降りそう夜なばりの異界の丘の寒から幕に Falling snow, please don't be too hard not to freeze my loved one where she is buried on the hill of Ikai, Yonabari. Kakinomoto no Hitomaro was a poet employed by the court and considered the greatest poet of the Manyoshu. He was excellent in composing both long and short poems. He has been known as saint of poetry for generations to come. He composed a poem about the sky. 雨の実に雲の波立ち月の船、星の林に漕ぎかくるみゆ。On the sea of heaven, cloud waves rise. The moonship is seen, sailing and disappearing in a forest of stars. The next poet is a low-ranking female official. She composed a poem when she was leaving her husband, who was being exiled to a distant place. It seemed that her husband was being punished by her social status. 君が行く道の長手を繰りたたね、焼き滅ぼさん雨の紐がも。The long road you'll take, stretching out into the distance. How I wish the heavenly flame would pull, fold, and burn it up. Empress Koroi was the granddaughter of Fujiwara no Kamatari and Empress of Emperor Shomu. The Fujiwara family was not an imperial family. She was the first woman outside imperial family to become the empress. She and her husband were deeply devoted to Buddhism from their early ages and were involved in the construction of many Buddhist buildings in the present Nara prefecture. She was excellent in calligraphy and she left behind some of her own works. When her husband was away on official business, she composed a poem while seeing the falling snow. 我が瀬こと二人見ばせば幾ばくか、この降る雪の嬉しからまし。My dear husband, how delightful it would be if I could see this falling snow together with you. 山辺の赤人 was a poet employed by the imperial court. He expressed various scenery beautifully in plain language. Along with Kakinomoto no Hitomaro, Akahito has also been highly esteemed. In those days, people went out to the fields in early spring to pick edible wild plants. It was customary to eat violet flowers and leaves. The event was called Picking Young Greens and was highly valued. Akahito composed a poem when he attended the event. 春の野にすみれつみにと腰割れぞ。の懐かしみ人よねにける。I just came to gather violets in the field of spring. so enchanted to find myself spending the whole night there. In ancient times, Japan had adopted much of the Chinese culture. The Japanese government of the time sent talented people to the Chinese court to learn about their culture. When the ships of the government mission to China were leaving the port, one mother of a member of the party composed a poem for her son. 旅人の宿り線のに霜降らば、我が子育め雨のたずぶら。Should there be frost on the plains, where the traveling party lodges? Please, the cranes in the sky, blanket my beloved boy with your warm wings. Many poems were composed about serving in military. In that era, men were dispatched to Kyushu Island to protect the borders against Japan's surrounding countries. This service was a kind of tax and conducted on a rotating basis of every 3 years. They were sent alone away from their families. One soldier composed a poem. 父母が頭かきなで咲くあれて、いいしけ飛ばぜ忘れかねつる。The words of my father and mother stood lingering in my heart, patting my head and said, Be safe and take care. 山の上のオクラ was very unique among the poets in the Manyoshu. While he composed poems on various themes, he also developed his original style of poetry. He wrote poems describing the real life about common people such as farmers, soldiers dispatched to Kyushu Island, and poor families, or expressing his deep affection towards the children. This is one of his unique poems. 世の中を牛と優しと思えども、飛び立ちかねつ、鳥にしやらねば。This world, filled with pains and sorrows, no matter how I wish, no way to fly away, since I'm no bird. It is believed that the greatest achievement by Otomo no Yakamochi in the Manyoshu was that he finally compiled it into 20 volumes. 10% of the waka or tanka poems in the Manyoshu were composed by Yakamochi. He composed one poem under unusual circumstances. One of his subordinates had been transferred to the district which Yakamochi governed. His subordinate had left his wife in the capital. Soon, he got crazy about a young woman and had her in his house. To advise him against his deed, Yakamochi composed a poem. In those days, clothes were dyed with plants. Scarlet dyed with imported plants was beautiful, but it faded quickly. The cloth dyed with acorns kept its colors long. Yakamochi compared his subordinate's young mistress to the scarlet dye and his subordinate's wife to the acorn dye. 紅は移ろうものそつるはみの慣れにし絹になおしかめやも The scarlet dye soon fades on clothes, can't even come close to the acorn dye you are used to wearing. During 130 years, when the poems in the Manyoshu were composed, the capital has changed more than 10 places, mostly in present Nara Prefecture. Buddhism was widely spread, and many buildings related to Buddhism were constructed. Some of them still exist in their original form and have been designated as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. This is the end of Manyoshu Part 2.